Filippo Brunelleschi is considered the first architect of the Renaissance era. Brunelleschi was also singular in that he had no apprenticeship in masonry, but was the son of a well-to-do Florentine lawyer, Brunellesco di Lippo, and so had a liberal education in order to follow in his father's footsteps. However, Brunelleschi never did, as he was artistically inclined. Although it has become commonplace for any aspiring artist to visit Rome and study the ancient language of architecture, Brunelleschi was one of the first to do that, with the accompaniment of his friend and fellow artist Donatello. Both individuals actually began their artistic careers as goldsmiths and later transitioned to architecture. However, not enough is known about Brunelleschi to explain what caused such a change. Linear perspective. Brunelleschi was not the first individual to explore perspective. However, he was the inventor of linear perspective, so it could be rendered in a scientifically measurable way. Mathematical perspective, a form of linear perspective, is a system of creating an illusion of a third dimension on a two-dimensional surface. Confusingly, mathematical perspective has to be linear, but linear perspective does not have to be mathematical. To achieve this way of creating pictorial space, there must be the minimum of two visual rays as straight lines, known as orthogonals, to draw the viewer's eye to the vanishing point. It also involves altering the size of the objects in the painting to suggest distance, and a great deal of modelling and toning, because the light creates volume. Additionally, the horizon must always be at eye level. There can be overlapping of both individuals and scenery, foreshortening in the front of the painting, and a background which involves both land and sky. Some of the most famous examples of linear perspective are Masaccio's Holy Trinity altarpiece, Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin on the Rocks, and the follower of Robert Campin, The Virgin and Child Before a Fire Screen. Brunelleschi's most noted works are the Dome of Florence Cathedral, the Foundling Hospital, and the Santo Spirito Basilica. The Basilica di Santa Maria del Fiori, or Florence Cathedral, was built on top of an ancient cathedral from the 4th century, dedicated to Saint Reparata, a 3rd century Christian martyr. However, in 1296, Arnolfo di Cambio began to rebuild it in Gothic style. When di Cambio died, the cathedral construction exchanged hands many times, and it took almost 150 years for the old cathedral to be completely rebuilt. In 1418, the Arte della Lana arranged a competition for the dome to be erected, which Brunelleschi won, with Lorenzo Ghiberti as his main competitor. The dome was finally finished in 1436 and was the largest dome in the world until recently, and is still the largest brick dome at 45 meters wide. Filippo Brunelleschi and his team built the dome without any temporary supporting frame, which would have been unthinkable at the time. It was also the first octagonal dome, most probably inspired by the Pantheon, a circular dome with support structures, which Brunelleschi would have seen when he visited Rome. The Foundling Hospital of Florence took over 600 years to build, and was finally finished in 1480, due to the competition of construction. In 1419, Filippo Brunelleschi was given the commission by the Arte della Lana, and became the capo maestro in charge of everything as the head architect, and designed some of the first scaffolding. The orphanage is an open public place with arches for shade, and was paid for partly by silk guilds, which had become very involved in the city funding. It was supposed to demonstrate how Florence as a city was civic, kind, and concerned about its people. Florence was also ahead of its time in the 15th century to build this kind of establishment. London did not have an orphanage until the 18th century. This building is a great example of semicircular arches, articulated in pietra soluina of the classical style, chosen because of the Renaissance movement, meaning rebirth of Romanesque style. They also chose to revive the semicircular arch because they thought it displayed Florence as being pragmatic and stable, whereas Gothic style had become seen as aspirational and daunting. In between the semicircular arches are blue circular roundels with reliefs of putti, designed by Andrea della Robbia, chosen because of the subject matter of the building, above which are tabernacle windows with triangular pediments. The arches are held up by grey composite over-supporting columns which stand out against the white stucco walls, which became Florentine tradition and the Brunelleschi trademark. It is sometimes insulted as the cheap equivalent of the baptistry. Interestingly, in terms of the architectural elements, the height of each column is the exact width between the colonnade and the width to wall to equal a perfect cube. Furthermore, the height of full building is exactly 3 columns from capital to cornice. This all signifies clarity, order, and harmony to the extreme to differentiate itself from the earlier Gothic style. In 1428, Filippo Brunelleschi began to design a new church, the Basilica of Santa Maria del Santo Spirito, or Saint Mary of the Holy Spirit, over the remains of a 13th century Augustan priory which had been destroyed by a fire. Brunelleschi, like many Renaissance humanists, believed that God designed the world according to mathematical principles, and so applied his invention of linear perspective to Santo Spirito to achieve a sense of harmony and rationality. The Santo Spirito that we see today is a lot less decorated than it would have been when Brunelleschi was alive. This is due to the Counter-Reformation, when most of it was taken down because it was believed that churches should be greatly more severe. Similar to the Foundling Hospital, Santo Spirito also has a colonnade of grey stone, known as serene stone or pietra serena. These composite columns hold up semicircular arches, leading from the back of the church all the way up to the nave, to the altar, and the walls are the trademark white stucco, which gives a great contrast of light and dark against the pietra serena. It has also been suggested that the use and amount of this stone is a sign of strong prosperity of the church in Florence, that they could afford to use this much. There is a coiffured ceiling, leading to a small dome, similar to the cathedral dome, also completed using a keystone. This architecture comes together to form a harmonious geometric feel and vision, which was integral to this period of the Renaissance. After Brunelleschi's death in 1446, he was buried in the crypt of the Basilica di Santa Maria del Fiori, the Cathedral of Florence, and there is also a marble bust.